mystery detectives. Welcome to our log home kitchen. Today on the table, I have a few things that I would like to show you and tell you about that would help pioneers make butter. Now, you know today we'd go to the store and buy our butter, but 150 years ago, you could not just go and buy butter. So the pioneers would make their own butter themselves. Now, these are some of the things that they would use when they were making butter. Let's start with this biggest item first. This is a butter churn. Now, our butter churn that we have here in our log home is made out of wood. You will see later on in this unit that there were butter churns that looked a little different and were made out of other materials. But this one is made out of wood. So the bottom part is a little bit wider on the bottom and gets a little narrower on the inside. On the inside of the butter churn, you would see something like this called the dasher. Now, the dasher was usually made out of wood too, and it was in the shape of an X or a T. This one has holes in the dasher, and the dasher was put inside of the butter churn and moved up and down, and this was what kind of agitated the cream to turn it into butter. Of course, we would have to have a lid for our butter churn too. We would not want the cream to be splashing out of our butter churn while we were using the dasher. So this part is just the lid. Now, after you get butter in your butter churn, you would have to take out your butter, and usually the pioneers would put it into a wooden bowl. So I have a nice large wooden bowl on the table. They would also have a wooden spoon that was kind of flat, kind of wide, and what they would use this for was to press the rest of the milk out of the butter. When you make butter, of course, you get butter and buttermilk. So after taking the butter out of the churn, in the churn I would be left with the buttermilk, and in the bowl I would have my fresh kind of blob of butter. So this would be used to press the rest of that buttermilk out of the butter. That was done so it didn't get rancid or rot fast, and it also made your butter more firm by getting the rest of that milk out. Now, after you got the rest of your buttermilk out, you usually would use some kind of butter mold or press to put a design in your butter. The pioneers took pride in the presentation of their butter. So usually they would use a mold or a press that would put a little bit of a design on their butter. So I have some here at the table. We kind of have a small and a medium-sized press, but they also made butter molds and butter presses that were even bigger than the ones that you see on my table. So here's a butter mold, and it's made out of wood, and it has a part in it that moves up and down. Here's another one that's the same style. So after your butter had all the milk pressed out of it, you would put your butter in the type of a mold like this. Push it all the way in. I think of it like how we pack brown sugar into a measuring cup when we measure brown sugar today. They weren't measuring their butter, but they were pressing it in the same way. Then you'd have your plate, your butter plate or your butter bowl ready to put this in, and you would just push this out, and it would press your butter out of the mold, but it would also leave this design on it. A lot of times the designs were leaves or flowers. Sometimes you would see animals or even a monogram. Do you know what a monogram is? If your last name is Smith, then you might have an S on your butter mold. Okay, so it's kind of like your initials. Another type of butter mold or butter press that people used was just one that you would just push into your butter. This one actually has a bird on it. And this one is just kind of that organic design where it has the leaves or some vines on there. So you'd put your butter and shape it on your plate or your butter dish, and then you would take the mold and you would just press it on top of your butter, and it would give that little design. So these are some items on our table here today that the pioneers would have used to make butter.